And here we go. Awaaz Day, starting it off. Here we go. It's going to be nervous, so let's make sure we encourage and give a lot of clapping and a lot of cheering. Here we go. Let's go.
It's bright up here. Hi, everyone. I'm John Katz, and I'm here to talk about Awaaz Day. And this doesn't work right now.
So how's it pronounced?
I always pronounce it wrong, but it's Awaaz Day.
Memorable.
It's Hindi for give voice.
Okay.
And can somebody advance this? Yeah. Any questions? There we are. Awaaz Day provides internet data services to people in developing countries using voice. Here's why.
There you go. We'll start your time
Thank you.
over again. Don't worry.
Awesome. Voice will be the preferred mode of internet access for the next 3 billion people. Let's take a second. That's a very bold statement, and I think it deserves some context. Today, a cotton farmer in rural India notices a disease is damaging his crop. He needs information on how to stop the disease and save his cotton. Unfortunately, his friends and family don't have the solution, and there are few local resources. Barriers to information are a global problem, and variations on this scenario occur throughout the world and across all areas of life, stunting health, wealth, education, and so on. And sadly, the traditional internet is not the cure. A big reason for this is access. This chart shows the percent of internet users worldwide across time. As you can see, less than 1/3 of the world has internet. On the other hand, almost 3/4 have mobile. Internet is rising, but mobile is rising much faster. In terms of equity, we see that in poor countries, this contrast is even sharper. These are the least developed nations, and you can see that internet use is essentially plateaued. In addition, text adds its own challenges, barriers to information that chiefly impact marginalized communities. Chief among these are language and literacy. On the other hand, almost anyone can learn to make and use a phone call. For this reason, Awaaz Day created a platform upon which organizations can host voice content in the form of voice portals. Think of these as audio forums. New content is added and disseminated through automated phone call routing. This allows communications to communicate with communities in a wide geographic setting en masse. Here's how it works. Our cotton farmer calls the local voice service and records his question. It immediately goes to the cloud, where a moderator sees it on the Awaaz Day browser interface. As you can see, it's very simple and looks probably a lot like your email client. The only difference is in the left-hand side, instead of inboxes, you have forums. Metadata is added to help manage content and accumulate analytics. And the list in the bottom here allows the question to be forwarded to one or more content experts. The call is forwarded, and the expert receives a call with the question. He then leaves his answer, and the farmer receives a call with the answer. Because the disease is spreading rapidly, the organization decides to broadcast the call to all the cotton farmers in the area. Alternatively, the farmers can all call the line at any time to listen to the latest messages. They can also add their own results and suggestions. And what happens over time is a call thread, a discussion thread, develops, as with a traditional internet forum. Now that you've seen a use case, I'll just walk quickly through the Awaaz Day feature set. We have question and answer, voice forums, announcements, phone surveys, analytics, and a reusable content library. Here's a snapshot of our company. As you can see, we're young and we're growing really fast. We're operating in 5 different states in India, and far from being limited to agriculture, we're being used in the following 5 fields. This is the present, but the future holds a much broader opportunity. We know our users aren't only interested in seeking information, but also have a lot to share. We have all sorts of calls. People call in to discuss issues with community members of other villages. They'll call and try and sell equipment, even sing songs, and we've had a lot of people try and solicit marriage proposals. With that in mind, we've decided to bring Awaaz Day to the mass market, allowing individuals and communities of any size to create their own voice portals. Here's some examples of what that might look like. personal voice pages, community portals, classifieds, voice Twitter, or government services. These are just a few examples because like the traditional internet, there are very few limits on what can be done here. We started it in India because our founders have roots there and have done a lot of field work in India, but with time and funding, we expect to roll two-way global communication throughout the world. Thanks. So you guys are supposed to ask me questions now.
Well, what's your business model?
Our business model currently is that organizations pay us for a scaling hosting fee, and so they're essentially paying us for the minutes used and the calls they make.
And are you a for-profit or a non-profit?
We are for-profit.
Where do you stand as far as deploying the product?
We have about 6 clients, and we're operating in 5 states in India. We've had about 10,000 callers and about 100,000 calls, although it's growing quite rapidly. And we host all of the services on our own machines, so a client only needs a web browser. It's kind of like a Salesforce type model.
Can you talk more about how the calls are organized? Is there a different number for every thread? Or how do I know I'm getting information about cotton?
Sure. So I'm reluctant to bring up the fact that it's an automated menu when you call. So think of when you call your bank. And that's really terrible for all of us when we call the bank and hear press 1 to listen to this or that. But for people with no other options, I mean, if you had to choose between having a bank account and listening to that or not having a bank account, you'd obviously choose to use that. So that's how it works.
So as you expand to all these other areas that you mentioned, isn't that menu going to be tremendous?
Yeah. I should explain. Every different voice portal, every organization has its own line. And then within that line, they can create their own forums. So some organizations have a forum for crops versus pests versus classifieds where people post things they want to sell.
You started off with a bold statement about how the future was going to be through voice, but it convinced me that this isn't already happening via text, and that SMS isn't already doing this in parts of the world like India.
Sure. So I've spoken to a number of farmers, and literacy is a huge problem, and it's not going away anytime soon. So text doesn't work for literacy. There's a big problem with language. So most people don't speak a dominant language. They speak a local language, and it's really hard to download a language pack. And I've spoken to people who've downloaded them, and then they disappear. So that's the big issue. And another issue is the content. There's very little content in local languages.
So you will be able to disaggregate languages via local usage, and you'll be able to create those menus and know who's using what per number?
That's right. The idea is that people are creating them within their own community or within their own state. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I must say, I mean, I like the cut of your jib, as they say, but I'm sort of puzzled by the scalability of this. I mean, once you start to go beyond, 1 or 2 calls, 1 or 2 questions per person, and you start, I mean, the amount of information in voice is so time-consuming and so forth. It can't be searched so easily, presumably. How do you deal with all those sorts of challenges? Is it really scalable?
Sure. Yeah, that's a really good question. Moderation with voice is a lot more difficult than text as it currently stands. But we're tagging the information, we're tagging the content, and we're going to be using machine learning and user-generated feedback to help manage content better in the future.
Matthew, you told me at the green room that the best feature on Economist Online is this button that you can press and it reads you the article by voice. So how come you doubt his?
Thank you.
Well, is there a sort of a visual component to this as well as the?
So our model is voice for the many, internet for the few. So we know that the people who are running the voice portals have internet. So they can manage the content on the internet using the interface I showed before. So the management of the content, the analytics, those are all done visually, and then only the callers experience it as a voice only.
In the briefing they gave us before we came to the podium, they told us that in order to engage the crowd, the audience, we have to be funny. Can you tell us anything funny? I'm trying to be a good citizen.
Sure. One of the early instances we had maybe this isn't funny.
They also said you were going to sing, though. I mean, which we really...
This
I
is
heard
for
dancing,
later.
dancing.
We'll
All of us together. Again.
So one of the first instances we had was callers calling because wild cows were trampling their crop. And I just can't imagine what that looks like, a herd of wild cows coming in and damaging the crop. That's as funny as these problems get. Yeah. I'm sorry.
How it's going to affect the greenhouse gases?
The phone calls or the cows? I think our time's up, so thanks everybody.
Thank you
Great,
very
thank
much.
you very much.